Hello everyone and welcome back to the Paper Mache Vecna from Stranger Things Season 5 tutorial. In the last segment, I finished up the chest using paper mache clay and some cotton to add in some of the other details. In this segment, we're going to finish this sculpt on this completely. We're going to carry on and finish up sculpting in the face and the head. And I'm also going to show you what I'm going to use to create the eyes. So without further ado, let's get working. All right, before we dive into this sculpt on the face and the head, just want to remind you that in a previous segment of this tutorial, when I was making the spikes for the body portion of him and the shoulders, I also went ahead and formed some little round spheres that I could possibly use for the eyes if need be. These are made out of Das air dry clay. But I have what's called thermoplastic pellets, and they're not in the original bag anymore because the bag was vacuum sealed, and so I transferred them into a plastic Ziploc bag. But anyway, this is what they look like. They're little plastic pellets basically. They're opaque in color, and what you do is, I'm just going to put quite a few of them. So basically these are activated with hot water, like very hot water, almost to the point of boiling. So I do have my electric teapot up there heating up, so I could take my little cup here, put some hot water in there. And the idea is that you form these into basically whatever shape that you want. I have used this material to form teeth. And if you have watched my Krampus bust tutorial, there is a segment in there where I show you basically how this is how I created the teeth using these thermoplastic pellets. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that now. All right, so now they're in some hot, very, very hot water. And as you can see, they have turned from the opaque color to clear. And that's how you know that they're hot enough so that you can handle them and shape them. I'm just using a fork. So they kind of all just stick together. This cools down pretty quickly, so I don't really feel like I need to be afraid of burning myself. So really, really simple. My idea here is to form some spheres. Set that one aside, and I'll form the other one. You can use them for anything that you want to have like an opaque quality to them. So as you can see here, when they start to harden back up, they change back into that opaque color. But there you have it, thermoplastic pellets. If this does not pan out, if it doesn't look right in my sculpture for Vecna, I'm going to go ahead and use my air dry clay spheres for his eyes. I just want you guys to have a look at the eyes that I just created out of the thermoplastic pellets. I shaped them into the spheres like you saw in that last little clip there. And then I pressed off camera, I pressed the spheres before they started to really, really cool and harden. I pressed the spheres inside the eye. And then I kind of just, with my fingers, just formed them into the shape of the entire eye socket. So, I mean, this stuff is really, really awesome. It's very cheap. If I remember, I'll put a link into the description of this video on where I got them. Like I said, comes in a big bag of these pellets. They last for a very long time, and if I remember correctly, they were only about maybe $16 or so, and they're gonna last me personally forever. So well worth it. We'll see how that's gonna come out when it's painted. They're not glued in there or anything. I just press them in there, and I'm gonna let them completely cool before I start sculpting. Okay, get your reference photos ready. because you're going to need those. Try to find one where there's kind of an up-close photo of his face, and then try to find one where there's a profile view of his face so that you could see what's going on the side of the head and how it kind of carries over in the back of the head. But the first thing I want to do here is determine where the upper lip is going to start on this guy. He really doesn't have like lips, so especially an upper lip, it's pretty much just like a straight line, and then he has a little bit of a lower lip. So the way to determine on a human anyway, rule of thumb is how far from the bottom of the nose of a human to where the top lip begins is generally a finger. So for instance, this is the bottom of the nose here, so a finger length of that human's finger. So the top lip would be right about here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to draw a straight line. That's my reference point for where the top lip, and again, he doesn't really have a top lip. He has a bottom lip, and he has all these other things that kind of, these vines and things that come out and around. But I just put that mark in there just to give me that reference point. Another reference point that I want to make is I just want to go right down the center and through the center of the nasal cavity. Again, just to give me that indication of where the center line is. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of my paper mache clay, and again, he has like the skeleton type nose. He doesn't have a nose at all. It's just that cavity, but he does have that nasal ridge. I don't know what it's called in anatomy, but he has like a nasal ridge like a skull does. So I'm going to create that just using a little bit of my paper mache clay. So from the very top of the nose, and then I'm just going to come down, and then whatever is hanging off, I'm just going to pinch that off and remove it. And just sort of shape that. This is my Scarecrow Joe Studio clay that I'm using. You could also, you could use whatever kind of clay that you have. That's air dry clay or paper mache clay will work. And with a little bit of paste and my small paintbrush, I just want to go in here, add a little bit of moisture just to kind of smooth just a little bit here. And especially around the edges, so that when it dries it will adhere to that dry clay. And the rest of the inside of the nose, I'm not going to do anything with. It's just going to fade to black when I paint it. Now, some of you are probably thinking, wow, that looks really, that just looks too wide, it's too big. But here's the thing, and I've mentioned this before, when that does dry, it's going to shrink. And when it shrinks, it should be the appropriate size for that ridge that's in there. All right. And again, I just want to point out those thermoplastic pellets that I used. Now they're completely hardened, and now they're white again. They're like an opaque white. All right, I put another light on this sculpture so that hopefully shines some more light on there so it's easier to see. But I'm going to carry on with the eyes and build up all that stuff that he has going on in around his eye sockets. So let's see if you could, I'm trying to, there's a glare. So if you could, hopefully maybe you could see that, but get a reference picture that has some photos. But there's a lot going on. He has like these little viney, you know, things underneath his eyes. So that's what I'm going to try to accomplish. And by doing that, I'm going back to cotton. So cotton dipped in paste should work really well. I have some gaps up above here where I inserted that thermoplastic eyeball in there. So that's the first thing that I want to address. I just want to come in here. And if you have a sculpting tool that's kind of pointy, you could use a wooden skewer. That will work as well. Something that you could just, you know, kind of push some cotton around. So I'm just, to start with, I just want to go in and put that cotton right around the eyes. So I'm just going to take another little piece of cotton, lay that in there. Basically, it's just sort of layering on some cotton around the eye. That's 2 layers of the cotton in there. Right now, right underneath there, where I just laid in that piece of cotton, I'm just going to take another piece, come in right in there. The really cool thing about using the cotton is that it's kind of sculptable. Like, you could put texture in there, as I am doing with this. You could press in texture and it will hold texture to some degree, which I think is great for this type of sculpture. I don't want to make his eyes too small, so I don't think I'm going to layer on any more to hide the eyes. We're going to carry on with the center of the face. I want to do a little bit of buildup of clay around the nose, kind of define that area. So I'm just taking a little bit of my clay and right around pretty much where that eyelid that I just created. Now this is a scenario or a situation on where you do want to do both sides at the same time. Unlike, you know, when we created the chest area, we didn't really need to do both sides at the same time. But on this, we're going to do both sides at the same time. At least for the center of this face here. Because you want to make sure that it's even. Both sides are equal. And also keep in mind, again, paper mache clay, if that's what you're working with, is going to shrink. So I'm just going to meet those 2 pieces of clay. And going back, sorry, I got to turn this for a minute, but going back to my reference photos, I want to push this in just a little bit. All right, I'm going to go with that. Looking at the reference photos, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Again, I'm not going for 100% accuracy. So let me give you a different angle of a look on this. So the clay is kind of angled on the side of the nose there. This is probably a better angle. angled to the side on both sides. So you could see profile and how that looks. And as always, I'm going to go in with paste and my small paintbrush and smooth out this stuff. All right, after I have that paste on there, I just went in with my sculpting tool, and right where I placed the clay, so right around the edges, I kind of just pressed some of that clay down and then went in and kind of smoothed it over. Because there's no armature underneath these sections of clay, they're kind of standing on their own. In order to kind of help keep them in position while you're moving stuff around and smoothing, you'll need a little support on the inside. So I'm just using another little, this is a rubber shaper sculpting tool, but you could use whatever. Again, a skewer will help for that. All right, I think I'm happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. Looks like a skeleton nose. All right, still working on the center of the face, continuing on that. I'm going to take a little bit more clay. I want to do a little bit of buildup right here. Just a little bit of buildup. As I'm looking at my reference photos, and he has like this little kind of a ridge and it comes down. So got that piece in there. And again, just like in previous segments, every time I lay on clay, I go back in with my paintbrush and some paste, apply some paste to that section of clay. And then I'll go in with a sculpting tool such as this. Anything that you have on hand that's going to help you kind of smooth things and, you know, move clay around will work. All right, we're going to leave the center of the face here momentarily because we're going to be building up from the center of the face out to the sides and up. But before I do that, I want to address ears. In a lot of the reference photos and even in some of the clips from the series, it does look like he sort of has ears, but not really. So I'm gonna put a semblance of an ear on him on both sides, but I'm not gonna like sculpt out, take the time and sculpt out, you know, and spend a lot of time on the ear because of all of these other vines and tentacle things that come around and go actually right over the ear. So I'm not really gonna do much at all, but let me turn this again this way. Now on this mannequin head, it did have a little tiny definition of an ear ridge, which is right here. I don't know if you could see it on the camera, but it kind of sticks out just a little bit. So all I'm going to do, and again, not very pronounced at all, I'm just going to use that area as a reference point. I'm going to come in with some of my clay and just really just build up a little bit of an ear. Probably wasting my time doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do as far as an ear shape is concerned, or trying to sculpt an ear. So that I have that on the other side too. I'm just going to come in again, paste with my paintbrush, and then smooth that out and do the other side as well. All right, there's my ear. So if you want to put ears in there, go ahead and I would just take some clay, outline an ear shape, make sure that the inside is a little bit more concave, and just, you know, shape that out. But that's all I'm doing because these ears are covered over, and I think this ear actually I think looks better than the other ear on the other side. But again, I don't care because all of this stuff is gonna have so much going on that will connect over and across those ears. I just felt like to be a little more true to the sculpt and the character and how it was originally created, I slapped some quick ears on there. You can leave them off if you want to. All right, let's move back to the center of the face and make some other stuff happen. So back with a little bit of my clay here. I want to do a little bit of buildup right in this area. Not super thick, but I do want to do a little bit more of a buildup. So let's see here. There's my coil of clay, and just, you know, I'm always keeping in mind that it's going to shrink, but I just want a little bit of a brow ridge in there. Kind of shaping it. And again, this is one of those things where you want to do both sides at the same time. This is too thick, so I'm going to get rid of a little bit of that. Going to go in with my paste and the paintbrush again, smooth those ridges out. And then with my sculpting tool, don't want them to be like super huge and pronounced, because there's going to be those vines that are going to be coming in on his face, and that's going to bulk up his face a lot too. So I'm being cautious with the amount of clay that I'm putting on here to bulk some of these areas. So I'm just kind of taking that clay, just shaping it with my sculpting tool. Don't want to hide all that work I did with the cotton, so I'm being conscious of that stuff that I already put in there. But just like that, and then I'll go in with a little bit more paste and kind of just smooth stuff out a little bit more. And I'll do the same with the other ridge there. All right, so I had to actually leave what I was doing to go to work. YouTube doesn't pay me. I'm not monetized on YouTube, so I can't quit my day job. So anyway, what I applied here and bulked up the brow ridge, all of that's completely dry. The nose cavity here is completely dry, all of that clay. And the cotton dipped in paste around the eyes, completely dry, as well as these ears. So what I want to do is move on. And I just want to put in that lower lip that he has. So it's not, again, it's not very big. It's not, you know, he doesn't have like a top lip. And the lower lip is pretty thin as well. So I'm not going to bulk it up so much. Just a little bit of clay, and I'm not really doing a whole lot as far as sculpting in any kind of details really at this point. And then I'll go in with a little bit of paste on my paintbrush, add a little bit more moisture to this little bit of clay that I put on there, and then I'll smooth it out and with a sculpting tool. And by the way, the paste that I use isn't anything special. All it is white flour mixed with water to a pretty thin pancake-like batter consistency. That's it. In case anybody was wondering on that. All right, so that clay is sculpted in and smoothed out. I'm just going to go in. I have this little sculpting tool here, and I'm just going to make just a little, press in a little bit of texture just some vertical lines basically on that lower lip, so that when it dries, you'll see that little bit of texture in there. All right, so we have some of the major stuff completed in the center of the face. Now we're really going to get down to business and start sculpting out all those vines and tendrils. And I want to start with the smaller ones. And according to my reference photo that I have on hand of a close-up of his Vecna's face, he has these vines that come up from his chin and they follow up around here. So what I want to do is put in the smaller, thinner vines or tendrils first, and then progress and move on to the thicker ones, so that when I put in the thicker ones, they will overlap a little bit on top of some of the smaller ones. So it'll look like a more cohesive sculpt that way. So I'm just going to start from about right here. And when this dries in, it's going to shrink. So it'll probably be about half of the size that I have on there now, or half of the thickness. So I'm going to bring this thinner tendril, add a little bit more clay to the end here, and I'm just going to bring it up right, kind of overlapping that ear a little bit. I'm going to do the same on this other side. And in order to make this look a little more organic, I'm not going to place them like identical to each other so that they're completely symmetrical. I'll raise one a little bit higher and kind of snake it around. So that's what I'm doing on this side here. Just going to add a little bit more clay here. And I think I'm just going to come in and just snake it to make it a little bit more interesting. I'll do a little slight curve in this one. So just like that, and I'm just going to kind of snake it up a little bit up around and towards the inside of the ear. So I have one that's kind of pretty much a straight line, curved, but also straight in the fact that it doesn't have any curves within that pattern, and it's coming down. I think I'm going to lower it down a little bit onto the chin a little bit more. So there's that one. And then this one, I kind of curved it and snaked it a little bit. So I don't want them to be completely uniform on both sides. And then paste with the paintbrush, and I'll smooth it out with my sculpting tool. All right. When you are sculpting, make sure that you're not just laying on a coil of clay and just letting it sit on top. You got to make sure that after you apply your paste and you go in to smooth things out, that you're blending in those edges. So you're taking some of that clay and you're blending in those edges so that it's not just sitting on top and then you'll have like a gap in between. And the other thing to be conscious of is keeping your form round. So you want it to be round. So again, when you are pressing in and smoothing, make sure you're not smashing the form down so that it's flat. You want it to be a rounded shape. All right. We're going to put in a couple more thinner tendrils. And I'm still using my Scarecrow Joe's clay. I'm going to come around, want it to sort of end right about there. And I'm going to kind of bring it up and over so that it's snaking a little more into the chin area. So there's that one there. I'm going to take another one and I'm going to put that little piece right there. So right directly underneath the lip. And I want to carry it so that it looks like it's connected underneath. And I'm going to carry it down. Take a little bit more clay. Connect that piece to this. You know, when you're laying on your clay, you could shape it and form it after you've put in your little coils. That's all smoothed in and shaped and formed. I'm going to take another small coil and put one in, kind of in here. Just sort of snake that in there. And bring it down. Just like that. So I don't want to just let it sit there. So with the edge of my sculpting tool, so whatever you're using, whether it's a skewer or whatever it is that you're using, make sure that you're taking those edges and pressing those edges down into the surface of the sculpture underneath it. And then after you do that, you can go in and re-smooth. So just want to give you a look. So here's these bigger coils of clay that are laid in, all in here. And then on the other side, I need to do some more work, put in some other stuff in this side, but I think I'm going to show you one side and then I'll do the other side off camera. It's pretty much going to be the same technique, the same thing. But right now I'm going to switch over and go back to the center of the face and use cotton dipped in paste just to make sure I get some smaller stuff going on. So I've got that piece of cotton dipped in some paste, squeegee it out, and I'm going to start from like the center of where the nose is, because he does have these tendrils that kind of come up and over and kind of around like this, but they're very small ones. So that's what I'm putting in there. And I'm going to do the other side as well. So kind of come in and over, and I kind of want to just snake it a little bit, kind of like that. I'm going to come in with another one right underneath there. And I'm just referring back to my reference photos. So he has all these smaller tendrils. By using the cotton dipped in paste, it's much easier to apply than trying to roll out my clay. And for real small ones, I mean, you could take little bits of cotton, dip it in your paste, and you could actually, when you're squeegeeing out some of that paste, twist it so it makes it a little bit smaller in some places. And then you could come in and put some thinner ones in. You can kind of overlap them a little bit. I'm gonna go in and use my little metal shaper here. Another little piece. And he has some that come in off of and overlap and kind of hang off of that nose area. So I'm going to bring that in and kind of up around like that. And I'm just going to let it hang off of that edge there, and it'll harden in place. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to put it right in here and have it kind of come down, and then right overlapping a little bit that dry cotton that I first put in there around the eyes. So this is laid in there. Again, it's slightly coming up over that ridge that I created for the nasal cavity. And then it swooped around underneath that eye. I'm going to take a longer piece of cotton. If you're using cotton balls, you just unroll those cotton balls and you should be able to get a pretty good length. Going to meet the edge of this one that I just put in there. Put it right, I'm kind of overlapping the one that I just put in there, and I'm going to bring it up. Kind of curve it a little bit, bring it up. I'm just going to let it go all the way up. Give you a better look. So when I laid that one in, it stopped right about there, and then I took another longer piece and I overlapped it where this smaller one ended, and I curved it and placed it just kind of right around here. There's going to be some bigger coils that I'm going to go back to the paper mache clay with that will overlap some of these things. But this will work really well for the smaller vines. And you could press in texture just like I did with the eyes, around the eyes. You can press in some texture into that cotton. I'm going to lay in a couple more just coming in right around the curvature of that nasal cavity ridge that I built up and over the eye and coming up. And I'll use a longer, thicker piece of cotton for that. I'm going to start right about in there and kind of just let it come in and over and up. So just like that, and just want to shape it a little bit and put in a little bit of texture. Just be careful that you're not pressing it flat. You want it to be raised so that it'll dry like that. So don't press it flat. Now across, like right between the eyes, on my reference photo, he has some of those going on as well. So I'm just gonna just lay in a couple of them, small little pieces. So if he had a nose, it would be literally like right over and above the bridge of the nose. All right, I laid in a few more pieces of cotton so you could have a look at that. I'm just kind of squiggling them around, really laying them in there, but momentarily I'm going to go back to my clay, and I want to add a little bit of clay, a little bit more clay in here, because he does have some small spikes that are kind of inside around where an eyebrow would be, I guess. So in order for me to do that, I need to press in some clay. And then I could also smooth this out and then press in those small spikes. I'm just gonna do like 1 or 2. I'm not gonna get crazy with it. He doesn't have a whole lot in the face itself, but he does have a few, and I think it would be just adding those details in there isn't gonna hurt, and I think it'll be a little more true to the Vecna character. So I don't need it to be very thick. Just thick enough for me to sink a couple little spikes in there. But I am taking the time to smooth in the edges into my dry clay and underneath the eye as well. I'm just gonna take one and stick one right in that wet clay there. Make sure that you have enough clay around your little spikes so that when they dry, they will harden right in place. One more. Stick it right in there. I put in some more stuff in his chin area on the reference photo that I have. He doesn't necessarily have vines or little tendrils or anything going on. It just looks like this mass of weirdness. So I just took some cotton and randomly just scrunched it up, dipped it in my paste, and then applied it kind of haphazardly in there to build up that area in that reference photo. So I think that's going to give it a similar texture. And then I put in some more of these cotton tendrils. So I laid in a bunch more in here. And then coming down around the back. I think I have enough of these for now. Carry on and start building up those bigger vines that come down from the back of the head and come down over, so that those bigger vines, thicker vines, will overlap some of these that are underneath, and it'll look pretty cool, I think. So little by little, coil of clay. This one's going to be probably about, I don't know, 1 inch thick is where I'm going to start with. And then I'm going to start on the back of the head. I'm going to put it right back here. I'm going to start it right back here. So I'm smashing down the one point of contact in the back of the head. And then I'm going to come down. And as I'm applying this, I'm smashing it a little bit. And I'm making sure that I'm smashing down my edges as well, and still retaining the round shape. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to continue this pattern. I'm going to connect another coil to that coil, and I want it to come kind of in and around and over towards what would be like the cheekbone area. As I'm applying this, I'm smashing down like the edges. Just got to make sure that you get good adhesion, especially if your clay underneath is dry. So there's that one big coil there, and once again, paste with the paintbrush, and then I will smooth it out, making sure that I retain the round shape to it. So after smoothing it out a little bit with the paste, I didn't like it that it was just kind of like a straight sort of coil. So I took this area here and I just moved it down so that it has the illusion of maybe some movement instead of just being straight. I have this little loop in there. All right. Give you a look at that there. I'm gonna get some more of these bigger vines, thicker vines happening. So I'm gonna take an even thicker amount of clay because I want a big, thick coil. And it's gonna shrink. I know I keep saying that, but it's gonna happen. I'm gonna come right back in here. So pretty much the starting point of that other slightly thinner coil of clay that I already put on there, where it starts back there, sort of starting this one the same. So it comes just underneath there. I'm going to continue on and just meeting, overlapping that just a little bit where it meets the clay that I just laid on. Making sure that I'm pressing in underneath to make sure that that clay meets the other clay there, the dry clay that's on this sculpture. So that's a very big, bold coil. I'll make it a little bit more dynamic by just moving it a little bit. It the very end a little thinner so it kind of tapers, overlapping on my existing clay there that I just put on there. I think I'm going to move it down. So I just kind of moved it down so it's going more down towards the neck. So you can see that. And it just comes down towards that neck area. I've got that bigger coil in there. Not gonna lie, it was a little difficult to get in behind these spikes and under kind of around, but an extra, I don't know, 5 minutes I was able to do it, get it laid in there and smoothed out. So not a big deal, but there's that bigger shape. A few more. I'm going to do a few more. Want to put some, not as big, not as thick as these, but I do want to put a couple more in there. So I think I'm going to go with my little point of it down in here. Build it up just a little bit. And I think I want this one to kind of just snake towards the back. I'm going to use a little bit more of this clay. So that kind of snakes towards the back there. And then I'm going to get a little bit more because I want to break up this area in there. So I'm just going to, I think from right about there, and come in here. A bit more on the end. So something like that. And then of course, paste and smoothing. All right, let's take another quick look at this. Show you more of what I have accomplished here. So I put in with the clay some more vines that are much thinner than the bigger coils that I placed in. So coming up over and above the head here a little bit, this one ends about right there. I've got some other ones laid in. This one branches out over here. Trying to turn this so that you could see where I put in that other one in there. And then in the back here, might be a little difficult to see, but right underneath this coil, I put in another coil here. So it starts right underneath, kind of connects a little bit, so it butts right up against this other coil of clay that I put in there. And then it comes down, and I attached it over towards the shoulder area. But as you can see, I formed it in such a way that I have this gap, this opening right in there, so you can see all the way through that. Let me turn this again. So from this angle, you could see it right in there. There's a gap that goes all the way through. I did not use any armature in that coil of clay. It was a thick coil of clay that I attached, and it should hold up. Hopefully it'll hold up. I do suggest though that if you're going to apply something like that and suspend it so that you have a gap or an opening, it's probably a lot better and maybe a little more worth your time and effort if you use an armature inside that particular coil, since it's not laying flat up against completely onto your sculpture. So you would just take a piece of aluminum foil, roll it up into the shape, and then what I would do is take some masking tape, put some masking tape all the way around it, and then you could either attach it by hot gluing one end to where you want to attach one end, and then hot glue the other end to the other area where you want to attach it. And then you could take your clay and form it right around there. That's probably the best thing to do to accomplish something like that, so that you make sure that that's going to be strong inside of there. That should be okay. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I should have done the coil method around the aluminum foil, but I was just going for it. So anyway, all of this here is pretty much done. I don't think I'm going to put in any more big, bold shapes or tendrils or vines using the clay. There's absolutely nothing in the sculpt or in the makeup of Vecna that has anything in the middle of the head and the top of the head. It's just kind of bald. So keep that in mind when you are forming your shapes. The one thing that I will go in and do is I'm going to add some more tendrils of the cotton, and I'll fill in a bunch of this stuff in here, and then it gets to be kind of sparse and very, very thin, minute, you know, little vines going in there and around in this area. But other than that, I might even put in a little bit more in here. possibly a little bit more in these areas as well, just to fill in a little bit more of those gaps, because he is pretty much covered in all of these vines and tentacles and tendrils and stuff. So I'm going to carry on. I think I've given you enough information and showed you enough on how to continue on in the face sculpt. Here it is now. I have finished up the sculpt off camera. I put in a little bit more of those smaller vines coming up through the forehead. I attached 3 more spikes here on this eyebrow area. Right now in here, kind of looks like he has a little bit of a weird mustache going on, but that will go away. That look will go away with the paint. So just want to give you a look at this side of the head and how that looks. And I wrapped the clay, sculpted in those bigger tentacles towards the back of the head there. Give you a look at this other side. So that's how that looks. So the sculpt on this piece is done. If you've been following along and you got this far to this point and your sculpt is finished, you're ready for paint. The only thing that I caution is that you do make sure you have this in front of a fan so that it dries completely for at least 3 or 4 days. You don't want to start painting if any of the clay or anything on your sculpture is still a little damp. Please make sure that it's completely dry, otherwise you're going to encounter some problems when you go to paint this. And on the back of mine, I temporarily attached this piece of foam so that I could sculpt the back of these details here with these tentacles easier, because where I had it positioned on my little tabletop easel, the back of the head was against the easel. So I temporarily attached just a piece of styrofoam with a little bit of hot glue that I can easily remove. So if you have that issue, stick a piece of styrofoam with a little bit of hot glue. You could easily take that off after you're done sculpting. I would wait until you're completely done painting before attaching a wall hanging bracket on the back. Do that last so that when you're painting, you can lay this flat in paint and not have it wobble around with a bracket on the back of it. As far as hanging and displaying it is concerned with the bracket on the back, right now this piece, it has a lot of clay on it, but paper mache clay, when it dries, it's still pretty light. So this is about 5 pounds as it is right now. So with your wall bracket, make sure that you get one that can withstand that kind of weight. So at least 10 pound bracket, and you're gonna be good to go. But as for me, I'm not ready to paint because, plot twist, I have decided to take this one step further, and I want to create a background for him that resembles the portal or the gate that he would be coming out of. So instead of just having him sit flat on my wall like this, I'm going to create that background with the portal just coming around him, so that when I do display it on the wall, he will look like he's poking through or about to just come right out of that portal. So if you're interested in watching me build that, that's going to be the next segment. And then once I'm done building that and I have everything attached, I will go ahead and I'll do a segment on painting the whole thing. But you could certainly paint it and display it just as it is. It's a really cool piece. And if you have followed along and you have created this and you're done and you're ready to paint, after you have painted and completed your project, please share your art with me. I would love to see it. I have a Facebook page, Scarecrow Joe's Studio on Facebook. You can message me and share your photos of your work. I'm also on Instagram at scarecrowjoes.studio. so you could share your art with me there as well. Whether you've decided that you're done or you want to carry on with me, either way, as always, I thank you for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.